Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video we're going to be going over my TBR for the month of June in 2020. I'm going to start doing things a little bit differently with my TBRs. If you saw my last video, you'll know that I'm kind of starting to, I shouldn't say wean off fantasy. Basically, I'm not really going to be reading as much fantasy anymore, but I want to do my TBRs a little bit differently, just the way I'm going to kind of like plan out kind of like the month ahead. What's going to happen is it's going to be about half, science, or nature and science books, I guess. And then the other half is going to be history books. But what I'm going to do is focus on like a specific era or theme or something for the history books. For example, like last month, I did all like medieval history books, and I actually really enjoyed kind of doing it, structuring it that way. And this month I'm doing ancient Rome as my theme. So we're gonna just like try that for I'm gonna try that for a little while, just see how well I like it. Like I said, it worked really good with the medieval history. Hopefully going forward it works as keeps going well. And also, like I said, if you notice, I'm not gonna be reading much fantasy, but I will be reading a lot more Warhammer, I guess, maybe like 1 or 2 books each month. So that'll be like kind of my fiction, my guilty pleasure reads, I guess. For the month, I don't know why I'm waving my hands like so much. I noticed that in this video. I'm not quite sure, but let's just go ahead and get started with the history selections. All right, first up, it's going to be one that I just found out about. Actually, both these first two were ones I just found out about. Like, yeah, I gotta definitely read these. First one's going to be Caligula, the Mad Emperor of Rome by Stephen Dando Collins. Stephen Dando Collins is actually a really pretty famous Roman historian. I believe he wrote right here, The Legions of Rome, like pretty much like the definitive history of the Roman legions and stuff. Fantastic book, by the way. It goes, there's like some general histories, and then also he goes like each legion that we know about, all their different campaigns and standards and like where they were formed and blah blah, all that kind of cool stuff if you're into that. I haven't actually like read through that book per se, but I've definitely like read bits and pieces out of it. Really cool. But anyways, obviously Caligula, the Mad Emperor of Rome is kind of like a biography of the third emperor of the Roman Empire, which between him and Nero, it's like a contest about who was the most despotic and crazy. And I usually kind of lean towards Nero, but maybe this Caligula book will kind of change my opinions on that. He only reigned for about 3 or 4 years, if I remember correctly, before the Praetorian Guard kind of offed him because of his shenanigans, I should say. But anyways, just sounds like a really cool kind of interesting biography. And from what I understand, there is like one big chapter, I think, in it that compares Caligula to like President Trump or something. So I'm like, yeah, I kind of have to read this now just to like just to see that part at least. So anyways, I will let you guys know how that one goes. And the other Roman history book is, I think, one that comes out this month, and it's Alaric the Goth by, oh shoot, I can't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. I'll put the overlay right there. But I think the subtitle is like An Outsider's History of the Fall of Rome. Alaric the Goth, Alaric the Visigoth, was the Gothic kind of chieftain, war leader, I guess you could say, who at the time in 410 sacked the city of Rome. What a lot of people don't forget about is before he sacked Rome, he actually was he was not a Roman citizen per se, but he was enlisted by like Stilicho, the Roman kind of like commander-in-chief at the time. He wasn't an emperor, but he was employed by him, and then he was also a functionary of the eastern half of the Roman Empire as well. So there was a lot of like politicking going on. He wasn't just like some random barbarian. The Goths didn't just come out of nowhere like this. They were like, they're trying to be like a federates, like which is kind of like a official barbarian tribe of Rome to help like kind of defend the borders and stuff. But anyways, that aside, this must be about kind of like, obviously kind of a mini, but I'm not exactly sure. There's got to be a lot of contextual stuff, because there's no way that we could write a whole book on Alaric the Goth just from the the lacking of sources that we have for something like a full book's worth of material. But still be kind of a cool slide to see the fall of Rome from the Gothic perspective. So that's why I'm going with that one as well. And then for my last Roman history book that I'm putting in, I got Rome Against Carthage. And this has 2 authors. One's T.A. Dory and the other is D.R. Dudley. This is just an old, I think, 1970 or 1969 history of the Punic Wars. It covers all 3 from my perusal of the contents. So it can't be, it's more of like an overview of kind of all of them, because all 3 Punic Wars in about 200 pages is, a pretty quick overview. But I would definitely want to be. I have a kind of whole Punic War collection. I used to write on the Punic Wars on an old website. So I kind of want to get back into that a little bit, but sorry, I got a distraction going on over there. But anyways, like I was saying, in the Punic Wars, something about the Punic Wars. Yes, okay, yeah, I used to write on the Punic Wars on an old website that I used to have, especially on the First Punic War. And First Punic War is just, I don't know, a really interesting subject for me for whatever reason. And for a lot of people, the Second Punic War between Hannibal and Scipio, Hannibal at least is kind of, Hannibal Barca is a household name from Roman history. So that's always kind of cool. Just kind of like learning about it. So like I said, I have like a Punic War shelf almost. So I'm going to start like going through them, and this is one of the shortest ones that I have, like one of the shorter ones. So I'm going to start reading it and taking notes over it, and we'll see how that goes. All right, and for one more history book, concerning like the whole like Black Lives Matter thing that is going on, I definitely felt the need that I need to read more from Black authors on racism and that sort of thing. And one of the books that I saw on like a lot of the lists that a lot of people weren't necessarily talking about too much was Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning. I think the subtitle is History of Racist Ideas in America, or The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. And I think a lot of people are shying away from this one, I think a little bit because it's pretty long and it's very academic from what I understand. Like, you know, it's like an intellectual history type of book. But I will be getting my hands on that just because it seems kind of up my alley for, like I said, kind of like, you know, kind of like an authoritative history, and obviously like kind of academic nonfiction writing doesn't really bother me, obviously, with, you know, science and history being like my two major subjects. But yeah, I definitely need just to learn more about like educate myself on this matter. I do have a lot of that I've purchased in the past week or two that I haven't arrived yet just because of like COVID and stuff, I'm assuming, with like the shipping times. A ton of I was kind of ashamed I didn't have a lot of Black authors that wrote on nature topics. I have a couple of shelves like out in another room, if you've seen in some of those videos, but there were very few Black and even just people of color in those, so I was definitely ashamed of that. I bought about, I think, 6 or 7 different nature authors, or Black nature authors on those topics, so I will be getting my hands on those as well, and I'll be doing like a book haul in a later video once all of those show up. So there's also Stamped from the Beginning. Alright, now let's go on to some of the nature books. The first one that I don't have is a NetGalley book that I need to read, which is The Language of Butterflies. And I can't remember this. I'm doing terrible. I don't have my paper with me, so I don't know all the subtitles. It is by Wendy Williams. I read one of her other works, which was The Horse, which is kind of like the whole evolutionary and biological history of horses, which I thought was really good. I don't even care that much about horses, but I had heard good things about it, so I was like, I'll just pick it up. And I gave it 5 stars. So I'm like, when I saw The Language of Butterflies, I've been getting into like field guides and learning about nature and stuff. I'm like, you know, I should read this one. So I'm going to be reading that as my NetGalley book of the month. Alright, another one is a famous author that I haven't yet to read, and it's Edward O. Wilson. He's like the world's leading myrmecologist, which is like a person who studies ants. But he's also one of probably the most famous kind of conservation nature authors around. And this one is Half Earth, Our Planet's Fight for Life. Don't really know a lot about it per se. Obviously the argument is we should set aside about half the planet for, you know, wildlife diversity and, you know, keeping like ecosystems alive and stuff. I'm not sure how that would actually pan out, just given, like, you know, the whole like state of affairs of like humanity on the planet. But it just sounds like an interesting idea, and like I said, Edward O. Wilson is definitely an author I need to start reading just because he's a prolific writer. He has won the Pulitzer Prize in nonfiction and stuff. So yeah, definitely gonna get to that, and this is the only one I own of his at the time. And then my last one is a new to me nature writer, but I can already tell from what I've read and listened to in the past is he's gonna be one of my favorites. Might be a little biased because he does have like a main cabin and stuff, and that's the state where I live, and he uses a lot of his own experiments and studies and observations of nature from his location in Maine and also his house in Vermont, elsewhere in New England. But anyways, it's Bern Heinrich's Winter World, The Ingenuity of Animal Survival, and this is all about how different animals in his area of the world, which also happens to be, you know, my area of the world, how they actually get by and live through, you know, -40, -50 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures in the wintertime, because New England winters can be brutal. So, you know, how do different bugs and how do different, like, small animals like squirrels and foxes and stuff, how do they actually survive the winter, you know, based on their, like, evolutionary biology and stuff. So it just sounds really cool. I did listen to one of his audiobooks, A Naturalist at Large, which was one of his more recent works, and I just, like, fell in love with it. I'm like, yeah, I gotta read more of Baron Heinrich's stuff. And then lastly, for a Warhammer book, I'm going to start trying to go through the Horus Heresy somewhat in order, even though I know you don't really have to, but I just feel like it'd be best for me to start doing it that way. We're going with book 5, which is Fulgrim, Visions of Treachery, and this one is by Graham McNeil. Fulgrim is the Primarch of the 3rd Legion, the Emperor's Children, and their whole shtick is they're, like, super vainglorious, I guess. They strive for perfection. It's kind of like they're like kind of like subcontext and stuff. They do become one of the traitor legions in this. I'm assuming this book is kind of like Fulgrim's fall from grace and the legion's fall from grace towards become a traitor legion. Eventually, in 40k, Fulgrim is like a demon prince of Slaanesh, which is like the god of like ecstasy and like not Everest. What am I thinking of? Like lust and stuff. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen in Fulgrim, but this is the next book in the Horus Heresy that I will be reading. So there you have it. Those are all the books I'm going to try and read in the month of June. I know it's already like a week into the month. I have read one of these already, but I tried to make it sound like I didn't yet. But yeah, tell me what you guys think about kind of my new setup with like half science and then half of like a particular history subject. Tell me if you guys think that's a good idea. Not that it probably matters that much to you guys. But anyways, if you've read any of these authors or books, leave some comments down below. Always leave recommendations, no matter what video it is. Just leave some recommendations if you have good books and like kind of the genres I read. And whatever you end up reading this month, always remember, read victoriously.